Yeah, okay. So after we get done with micro on Thursday, what we're going to do is spend a couple weeks. Okay, I guess me and Ben will be working together to review everything. Okay, and then what we're going to do after that, we're going to do some mock tests. We're going to see how confident you guys are with microeconomics, and then we're going to move on to macroeconomics. Sounds like fun, huh? Ooh, ooh,
When
ooh,
do
ooh, ooh.
we
Let me do it.
start?
Let me do it. Let me do it. Yeah, we're going to move over to macroeconomics. Okay. So what that means is over the next couple of weeks, you guys are going to have to do a lot of review work on your own as well. Okay, so look over your notes. I know none of you guys do this, but I provide those textbook files for you. So go take a look at the PDFs. Okay, you don't necessarily have to read every single word there. I know you guys hate textbooks. Okay, but flip through it and make sure you guys understand the general concepts. Good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so we had a good couple days last week. Okay, let's finish this strong. We have two last big topics to talk about: externalities and public goods. Okay, externalities, you know what? It's not all too difficult. The basic idea of externalities is sometimes people make decisions that has an effect on those people around them. Okay, and those people around them, they were not the ones making the decision. Okay, but my decision is going to start to affect them. Okay, sometimes what I decide to do has a positive benefit on those people around me. Okay, sometimes what I do, okay, has a negative cost to those people around me. All right, so we're going to be talking about positive externalities and negative externalities and what the government could do to try to fix these up. All right, so we're going to start in with positive externalities. Think real hard. Think of an example of something you decide to do and you're only doing it for your own benefit. Okay, but it's going to have a positive consequence on those people around you.
Going to school happy
How so?
because you smile and you make people smile.
Yeah,
Be
okay,
the reason
it's that
someone
basic
smiles
idea.
every day.
Those other people, okay, did they force you to smile?
No.
No, okay, so it was your own decision to smile at school. Okay, but because you're smiling, you're making their day just that much better. Understand?
Remember, James,
Uh-huh.
be the reason someone smiles every day.
I think about that every day. Okay, good. All right. So when we talk about positive externalities, okay, what we need to do is start breaking up this idea of private benefits and social benefits. Okay, so when people just worry about themselves, okay, remember way back in economics when we first started talking about how people make decisions, they're always going to balance out the extra benefits, they're always going to balance out the extra costs. Okay, but now with those marginal benefits, we're going to split those up a little bit. Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about something called marginal private benefits, MPB. Okay, marginal private benefits. These are the extra benefits just to me, the decision maker. All right? But again, sometimes stuff that we decide to do by ourselves, just to make ourselves happy, has a marginal external benefit. Okay? And these are the benefits to those people around me who are not making the decision. You can just think about this as the benefits to you. And what happens if we add up the benefits to me and the benefits to you? We're looking at the benefits to everybody altogether. We're going to call that MSB. Anybody take a wild guess? What's MSB?
Marginal social benefits.
Yeah, okay, that's to us. That's for society as a whole. Okay, so one more time, what was MPB?
Marginal private benefits.
What was MEB?
Marginal external benefits.
And what was MSB?
Marginal social benefits.
And I only have Joel in class today? Huh?
Yes.
Nobody else is speaking?
So
Okay.
I'm
Present.
writing no.
Good, good, good. Okay, so marginal private benefits to me, marginal external benefits to those people around me, okay, and marginal social benefits, the benefits to everybody altogether. Here's the problem with this. When I'm making a decision, which one of these benefits do you think I'm considering?
Me.
Your private.
MPB.
MPB.
Okay, screw it. I know there might be positive benefits to other people, okay, but I'm the one making the decision, okay? So I only worry about my own marginal private benefits. I know it sounds like I'm being greedy or selfish, okay, but this is generally how people make decisions, okay? Because again, whenever we start balancing out marginal benefits and marginal cost, well, in terms of cost, who's paying for this? Me. Okay, so I'm sorry to say, even though it's benefiting those people around me are not helping me pay for it. So in that case, I'm just worried about myself. So what we're going to do is take a look at how private people, individuals, make decisions. Okay, we're going to take a look at their market P star and Q star like we always do. And then we're going to try to figure out what's best for society. We're going to be looking at marginal social benefit. Okay, and then we're going to see how that doesn't match up and what the government could do to try to make it match up. Okay,
What is the MC
one more
that
time.
you wrote? The you and us.
Sorry, what was that?
The MC. That the me, you, us.
So for right now, we're just talking about positive externalities, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about private benefits, external benefits, and social benefits. We're not talking about a negative externality yet. Okay, so assume that marginal cost. Assume here that the marginal private cost and the marginal social cost are exactly the same. In that case, if you think about it, then what's the marginal external cost equal to?
MPC.
If the marginal private cost is exactly the same as the marginal social cost, then how much external cost is there?
I don't know.
Zero.
Zero. Okay, what that means is there's no negative externality. There's no extra cost to those people around me. Okay, so when I don't split it up like that, if I just talk about marginal cost, then you could just naturally assume that private costs are the same as social costs. There is no external cost. So in today's class, you're going to have to be very, very careful about how I talk about these different benefits and costs. All right. So we're going to be taking a look at one market. Okay, one market where we always see a positive externality is the market for vaccines. Somebody explain that to me. Why does this have a positive spillover benefit to those people who aren't making the decision?
Because you're not getting. Okay,
It's not your decision to get sick.
Well, it's my decision not to get sick. It's my decision to get this vaccine. But how does that benefit those people around me?
Because you're not going to get sick.
Yeah. Okay, because I don't get sick, I'm not going to be contagious, which means I'm not going to make those people around me sick. Okay, but when I get a vaccine, when I go to the, what do you guys have in Panama? Do you guys have a Walgreens, a Rite Aid, a CVS? Anyways,
Arrocha.
when you guys go to the pharmacy to get a flu shot, okay, are you worried about getting other people sick? No, I'm just worried about getting myself sick or preventing myself from getting sick. I'm just worried about my own private benefits. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like. We're going to do it together. So we're going to go right back to our basic idea of how to make economic decisions. Here's PQ. We're going to be looking at marginal benefits, and we're going to be looking at marginal costs. Okay, generally we think that the more we do of something, okay, the extra additional benefit is going to start to go down. Okay, it's that idea of marginal utility. You could think about it that way. In terms of marginal cost, okay, the more we do, okay, typically the marginal costs tend to rise. Okay, we've seen this before. So what's wrong with this quantity here?
You benefit more from what you're paying.
The extra benefit is bigger than the extra cost. So what should my decision be?
Do more.
Do it and start to do more. But what's wrong with this quantity here, Q2?
Your extra benefit is lower
the
than
additional cost is actually bigger than the additional benefit. Okay, you're losing out more than you're gaining. So I don't want to do this one. And actually, I want to start shrinking my quantity. Okay, so back and forth you go through that invisible hand, and we end up here where your marginal benefit is equal to your marginal cost. Okay, throughout economics, we saw that so many different ways. We saw it as MR is equal to MC. The extra benefit to the company is equal to the extra cost. We saw it as who remembers that?
Consumer surplus.
Not quite.
Factor market.
Factor markets. What was MRPL?
Marginal revenue product of labor.
Yeah, that's what the company is gaining by hiring this last worker. But what's MFCL?
Marginal factory cost of labor.
Yeah, okay. That's the additional cost to the company for hiring this last worker. So we want to balance out our additional benefits and our additional cost. It's the same sort of economic idea we've been using throughout this course. Okay? All right then. In that case, now all we're going to do is bring in this idea of external. So here's marginal private benefits. And here's just overall marginal cost. Okay? Then, since I didn't label it anything special, you could think about that both as marginal private cost and marginal social cost. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. So if you leave these people on their own, they're only going to be worried about themselves. So they only balance out their marginal private benefits with their marginal private costs. So they're going to be here at this market equilibrium Q star at this market equilibrium price. Okay, maybe in this case, when we're talking about vaccines, okay, maybe just thinking about my private benefits and my private cost, okay, I might decide to get 3 vaccines this year, okay, at a price of something like $10 each. But what we're going to do is we're going to assume that there's these external benefits to those people around us. Okay, so every time you get a vaccine, it's going to have, it's really hard to measure. Let's say every time you get a vaccine, there's $3 worth of benefit to those people around you. Okay, so you could think about that marginal external benefit as being constant. There's MEB. So every time you get one more vaccine, that's $3 of benefit to those people around you. One more vaccine, $3 more of benefit. Okay.
What does the $3 of benefit do?
I don't know. It's like measuring marginal utility. How do you measure happiness? I don't know. We're just gonna put some dollar amount to it.
Yeah, but is it like like donations?
Not quite donations.
No.
Again, it's just it's weird. It's very, very weird.
Es como que tipo, si tú te inyectas, tú no vas a contagiar a una persona con algo, así que como que tú estás ganando que la persona se inyecte porque tú no te vas a contagiar, es tipo eso.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but
Okay.
yes, Shana. Okay, so it's just our way, some economic way of measuring the benefits to those people around you. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to assume that it's a nice constant $3 per vaccine that you get. Okay.
Will the MEB always be constant?
For us in AP microeconomics, yes, it will be. Okay, later on when you guys take college economics courses, then you could start changing around a little bit. Okay, but for us right now, we're going to keep it nice and constant, just to make it super easy. Okay, but again, what was the relationship between marginal private benefit and marginal external benefit?
That added together, it's marginal social.
Yeah. There we go. Is equal to marginal social benefit. Okay, so that social benefit is what we want to take a look at. Okay. Now, what we did is, because we assumed that marginal external benefit is constant, this stuff. Okay. What we could do is we could just add that constant marginal external benefit on top of our marginal private benefit in order to come up with overall marginal social benefit. So how much was this vertical distance here?
Marginal external benefit.
Well, what about this vertical distance here?
of the marginal external benefit.
Here, here, here. All we did is we shifted up marginal private benefit by the amount of a constant marginal external benefit to come up with marginal social benefit. Did you guys follow? So on
Yes.
top of our marginal private benefit,
Why did you erase the MEB?
what did I erase?
The MEB.
So I took my marginal private benefit, and then what I did was I added on an additional constant amount of marginal external benefit in order to come up with a new line, which is my marginal social benefit.
But what about the one that you had constant?
You could see that guy right here. Where is that? You can see that guy right here. Okay, here's the constant amount, okay, that I added on top of marginal private benefit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, if we're thinking about society, where should we be at? We should be where the marginal social benefit is equal to the marginal social cost, which is going to be here. Okay, so we know if we just leave this person alone, they're going to get 3 vaccines for $10 each. But we know that society would be much, much better off if we were at Q, let's call it S for socially optimal quantity. Okay, we would be much better off if people were getting 5 vaccines every single year. But what's the problem with that? Why don't people want to get 5 vaccines per year?
They're expensive.
Yeah. Because now, okay, the price might be a little bit higher than it was before. Do you guys see? Okay, so again, if you just leave people alone, they're only going to think about themselves. They're only going to think about their private benefits, and they're going to think about their private costs. So they're going to be here at P star, Q star. Okay, but we know that society is going to be much, much better off if people think not about their own private benefits, but if they think about social benefits, which actually include these external benefits. So society would be much better off if people were getting 5 vaccines at a price of $15 each. The only problem is society isn't paying for this. It's the individual person. Okay, because of that, screw society. I'm just going to worry about myself. I'm just going to get 3 vaccines for $10 each. Okay, and here's the general problem with positive externalities. Whenever you have a positive externality, it's always going to be the case that if you leave people alone to make their own decisions, they're always going to be doing less than the socially optimal level. Okay, we should be at 5, but people are only going to do 3. So the big question is, if you're the government and you're taking a look at this, and you know that you would much rather have people be at QS, but right now they're only at Q star because they're only worrying about themselves, how do you get these people to do a little bit more?
Yes.
What would you do as a government? How do you not force people to do more? You can't really force them, but how do you convince them? How do you persuade them to do a little bit more of something?
Advertising.
Advertising could work. Neo, what was that?
Propaganda.
Propaganda, a type of advertising, yeah. Okay, so that's why you actually do see on street corners and stuff, okay, telling people to get vaccinations. Okay, but give me something a little bit stronger.
Taxes.
If you tax people, do they do more or less?
No, less.
Less. So
Maybe
how do you get
like
them to do more?
obligation, like a requirement.
You know what? Government actually does do that, okay? You know, if you want to go to a public school, like let's say you're a 6-year-old and you want to go to a public kindergarten. I'm not sure about Panama, but in the States, if you want to go to a public school, okay, you have to show all of your vaccination and immunization records. Okay, if you didn't get vaccinations, they're not going to let you go to school. Is that fair?
And
Yeah, I think that's
also,
very
what
fair
about-
because if your kid gets sick, that means all the other kids are going to get sick too. That's not cool.
What about when you go to like a country and they require
Same thing.
a certain
Yeah. Okay. You're not
medicine?
allowed to come into. I'm not sure about Panama, but you're not allowed to come into certain countries without getting your immunizations first. okay, because they want to make sure that you being sick is not going to make everybody else in the country sick. Okay. Now, you told me some very good ideas about how to get people to do more. Okay. What people respond the easiest to is always money, money, money. Okay.
Oh, they make them free.
Kind of, sort of. Okay. You're going to make it free. You're going to make it very cheap to get these vaccines. Okay. The other way of making it free or to make it cheaper, instead of taking a tax away from people, what do you call it when you give free money to people?
Subsidy.
Subsidy. Okay, so what the government is going to do is grant these people a subsidy to help them pay for these vaccinations, and that's going to encourage them to do a little bit more. Now, here's the thing: how much of a subsidy should we provide? Remember what we said before. This
The
marginal.
least they're willing to take to change to do more.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Okay. Let's say the government had all this information. Let's say they had their statisticians working on all these graphs and they know all of these numbers. Okay. And one thing they're going to know is this marginal external benefit. Okay. Let's say somehow they measure it and they find out that every single time that you get a vaccination, you're going to bring $3 worth of benefit to those people around you. $3 worth of benefit for every quantity.
You
In
should
that
give
case,
people $3.
what was that?
You should give the people $3.
Yeah. If you know that what they're doing is giving $3 worth of benefit to those people around them, then you know what? The government is just going to pay them a subsidy of $3 for every vaccination they decide to get. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to provide a subsidy exactly in the amount of MEB. And if that's the case, if you're giving them a subsidy in the amount of MEB, and again, people just worry about their own marginal private benefits. But now, on top of those marginal private benefits, they're going to have this additional subsidy as well.
Yeah, but how do you know that the subsidy they're gonna use it for?
You make the subsidy very, very specific. You don't just give them $3 free. Okay? You say if you get a vaccine, we'll cover $3 of the cost. We'll pay for $3 of it for you. Then what's
Okay.
going to happen is,
Where's the subsidy in the oh, okay.
yeah, you make it a very specific subsidy, okay, just for vaccinations. Okay, so that what's going to happen is people just think about themselves. They just think about the marginal private benefits, but now those private benefits are going to increase by the amount of the subsidy, so that they come up with this brand new purple line. But the cool thing is that purple line is equal to the marginal private benefit plus the amount of the subsidy. But what is that exactly equal to?
MSB.
Yeah. Okay. So think about what you're doing. You're giving them money to make their private benefits pretty much equal exactly the social benefits. You're kind of persuading these people to think about, the people around them. Okay. Listen carefully. What you're doing is you're trying to get these people to internalize the externality. Trying to get them to internalize the externality. You want them to think about society by paying them to do so.
to internalize what?
Internalize the.
I'm not gonna be here on Thursday, so
You're not going to be here on Thursday. Okay.
no.
Anybody else going to
Probably.
miss Thursday?
Maybe me.
What's going on Thursday?
I'm
Long weekend. It's a long weekend.
Why is it a long weekend?
I'm leaving. I'm going to Boston.
Oh yeah, you're
so
coming up to
I'll be
Boston.
Right.
Okay, we can
Right.
have a class together up here, Joel.
Yay.
That was a joke,
I'm
man.
good.
That was a joke.
Yeah, it's because we have a long weekend, so we're going to the beach. I'm going to the beach.
Don't you guys get sick and tired of the beach?
No.
No. What do you guys go and play football in the sand all day?
No, we have homes in the beach, so we stay home.
Why not just stay at home then? It's just nicer out there at the beach,
Yes.
I guess. Okay. So again, Nia, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to internalize the externality. You want them to think about this external benefit by paying them exactly that amount. Okay. All right. So if that happens to be the case, if you're giving a per unit subsidy of, let's say in this example, $3 for every vaccination that people are getting, well, at our socially optimal level, how many vaccines are these people getting? What's our socially optimal quantity?
5.
5. Okay, and for each one of these 5 vaccines, how much of a subsidy are you giving them?
$3.
$3. Well,
Oh,
$3 for $3 each for 5 vaccines. So how much money in total does the government need to give these people?
3 times every vaccine they have.
How many vaccines are they giving?
It's 50,
5.
but that's the
It's
price.
15. That's it. Okay.
But that's the price.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be that price. Let's say the new price is something like $12.
Okay.
Okay. So in order to figure out the total amount of money the government needs to spend here, okay, remember, how much is this vertical distance?
MEB,
MEB, or
3.
the subsidy.
the amount of the subsidy. Both of those is going to be 3. So how much is this vertical distance here?
3.
3. Okay. $3 for each one of these 5 quantity. So again, what we're going to do is length times width. This area here, what that shows you is the total amount of government spending. Okay, so the government needs to spend a total of, in this case, $15, okay, in order to get people to do the socially optimal level of this vaccine. Okay, so I think this is a very good place to, end our discussion about microeconomics, because we're bringing in all these ideas together. Okay.
Wait, James, I have a question.
Yeah.
What was the square?
The total amount of government spending, okay, which in this case
but
is going to
I
be
have a question.
$3 per vaccine times 5 vaccines that people are getting. So the area there, or the total amount of government spending, is going to be $15.
Okay, so it's okay, it's the point between MPB and MSB and
Uh-huh.
just
MPB and MSB at
at the
QS,
second quantity.
uh-huh, okay, times the quantity, yeah.
Well, why
Okay.
would it be $3 if here it's 2?
No, because the subsidy.
The subsidy is $3, okay? Quite honestly, I'm not sure what that P star could be. That kind of depends. Joel, I hope you see this, okay? That kind of depends on what my marginal cost curve looks like. Does that make sense?
So you picked the number 3 randomly.
Yeah, I picked it randomly.
Oh, okay.
All right. Good. Let's do this one more time. So what I'm going to do is P and Q. And then here I have my marginal cost. Here I have my marginal benefit, but this is going to be the marginal benefit just to me. What do I call that one?
Marginal.
Marginal private benefit.
Marginal private benefit. So as a private decision, I decide to get this market equilibrium P star Q star. But I know that this is a positive externality. Okay, so there's going to be some constant amount of marginal external benefit to those people that aren't making the decision. And then what I'm going to do is add MEB.
How do I know what's the distance between MPB and MSB?
Assume.
Subsidy.
Assume. Yeah. Okay. Either on the AP test, they'll give you a number. Okay. Or what you could do is just draw it and assume that it's some constant amount of MEB. Okay. Add those two up together, and we're going to come up with MSB, which is going to be that nice red line that somebody drew. And by the way, what is the vertical distance between MPB and MSB?
MEB.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you colored it correctly. There we go. Okay. So somehow, we have to get people to be at this socially optimal level, QS and PS. So how do we do that? As the government, how do we get people to do a little bit more?
Subsidy.
Yeah. And if you're smart, you're going to subsidize exactly the amount of,
MEB.
yeah, to make them internalize the externality.
What's like? Why would you give the exact amount?
Huh?
What's the reason for giving the same amount as the MEB?
Whoever's drawing, could you stop drawing for a second?
Nadie escriba.
Okay. Natalie, if you didn't subsidize exactly the amount of MEB, let's say you miscalculated, okay, and you subsidized them a little bit too much, then
No,
your
maybe
MPB
not.
plus your subsidy would be out here. Okay, where this much would be the amount of the subsidy, which means we would be at this quantity. Well, that's a little bit more than we were looking for, right?
What if it's less?
Okay, if it's less, what if we subsidize less than MEB? That means this would be our brand new MPB plus subsidy, because this would be the amount of the subsidy. Okay, what that means is we're better, okay, but we're still not at the socially optimal quantity. We're not quite there.
And if you do too much,
Then we'll go beyond the socially optimal quantity.
okay.
Okay, so if you're the government, you're going to try your best to get this just right, okay, so that the MPB, marginal private benefit, plus subsidy line is going to be right there. MPB plus subsidy is going to be right there, right on top of the marginal social benefit. That's why I talk about internalizing the externality. Okay, you want people to be at MSB, but they're not going to do it on their own. So you give them a subsidy exactly in the amount of MEB, the marginal external benefit, to make them, to help them, to convince them to think about others. Okay, and then just through market forces, they'll be here. Okay, so now this private decision, including the subsidy, is going to be exactly at the socially optimal level. Okay, and again, if this is the per unit subsidy, and this is how many units the people are getting, then what does that area represent?
Government
The
spending.
government
Yeah,
spending.
this is the total amount of subsidy that the government needs to give. Okay, it might take a little bit of time to fully grasp it, but I think you guys are getting the general idea. Okay, so again, the general problem with a positive externality is if left alone, people aren't going to do enough. So the government is going to try to get them to do a little bit more, to go to the socially optimal level. Okay, and the only way to get people to do a little bit more is to subsidize them, give them some free money to help them out. Okay, then with that basic idea, let's flip the story around and talk about a negative externality. Something that you do, something that you decide on your own that has a negative effect on those people around you.
Smoking.
Smoking. It's my decision to smoke. Okay, yeah, even for me, I weigh out the benefits of smoking. Let's say, I don't know, some people say that it relaxes them, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and I weigh out all the drawbacks, all the bad stuff about smoking. I know it might lead to cancer. I know it causes me to cough. I know it causes me to smell, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I weigh out my benefits. I weigh out my cost, and I decide that there's a certain amount of smoking that I'm okay with. Okay, but the problem is every time I decide to smoke, it's going to have a negative consequence on those people around me. Okay, if I just decide to smoke in the classroom, then all the students who are sitting there, they have to put up with that nasty, nasty smell. Make sense? Now, when I'm deciding to smoke, do I care about those other people?
No.
No. Okay, because this is my own private decision. So, if left on their own, try to use the same sort of analysis here. If left on their own, with a negative externality, are people going to be doing too much or too little?
Too much.
Too much. So how do you get them to do less?
Tax.
Yeah. One more time. With a positive externality, if left alone, people will do too little. So you subsidize them to do more. With a negative externality, left alone, people will do too much. So you tax them in order for them to do less. So let's take a look at what that negative externality looks like. Okay. Same basic sort of idea. People just think about their own marginal private costs. Okay, these are just the cost to myself. But on top of that, there's going to be these external costs. Okay, costs to those people around me who are not making this decision. Okay, they're just receiving the side effects of it. Well, if we add those up together, we're going to come up with marginal cost for society, the marginal social cost. So I take the marginal private cost to myself, add in the marginal external cost to those people around me, and that's how I come up with overall marginal social cost. Okay? Now, when this guy makes his own decision, he's only going to be thinking about private cost. But we know for society, for the economy, for everybody altogether, it'll be much better for him to think about marginal social cost. The only problem is he doesn't do it. Okay? Just worries about himself. Okay? So you talked about this in terms of smoking. Well, another place we see this all the time, okay, is with pretty much any type of production that happens. Okay? Whether we're talking about t-shirts or hot dogs or anything. Okay? Because most of the time, whenever you produce something.
James, I have a question. So basically the difference is that instead of it being a benefit, obviously it's a cost.
Yeah. So instead of there being an extra benefit like there is with a positive externality, with negative externalities, there's going to be an extra cost, an extra bad stuff to people around you. Okay? Just like for this firm here, for this company, whenever they decide to produce something, they take the inputs, they change it over into outputs. Okay? And they're in it for the profit. But the sad fact of life is, for most production, it's going to be causing some sort of pollution. Okay? And that pollution is going to negatively affect the town around this factory. But for this factory, okay, do they worry about this pollution?
No.
Not if they don't have to. Okay? They're just worried about the profit. So somehow the government needs to get this firm, again, to internalize the externality, to start thinking about this pollution. How do we do that?
Tax them.
Yeah, tax them for that pollution. If somehow we're able to measure out that every time this firm produces an output, they're causing $100 worth of pollution to the town around them, then you know what? We're going to tax them exactly in the amount of that marginal external cost. Here we go, back to the graph. PQ. Okay, here's my marginal benefit. Here's my marginal cost. But now I'm going to call this guy marginal private cost. Okay, the reason I do that is because I want to show you there's a difference between private cost and social cost. So left alone, this company, when they produce, let's say they're producing cars, okay, they're going to produce this many cars at this price. But the thing is, every time they produce a car, they're also going to be producing some pollution. Does that mean we should regulate this company? We should regulate this industry so that they stop producing pollution?
Yes.
Do we want to get rid of pollution 100%?
Well,
Yes.
yeah.
No. Because if we get rid of pollution 100%, then what does that mean about the amount of cars we have?
There will be no cars.
Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but there must be a certain amount of pollution that society is willing to deal with. The reason is, man, we love the products. Okay? We don't want too much pollution, but we want just enough to receive all the happiness from the product. Okay? The way we see it here is, again, assume that there's some sort of constant marginal external cost. Okay? But I don't want to draw you another line like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add these constant marginal external costs right on top of the private cost. So what that's going to mean is here is going to be marginal social cost. And one more time, what was that vertical distance in between MPC and MSC?
Marginal external cost.
So in terms of society, we would be much, much better being here at this quantity, at QS. Again, if you leave people alone, if you leave this company alone, they're going to be producing too much. So somehow we have to get them to produce a little bit less. How do we do that?
Tax.
And we're going to tax exactly in the amount of MEC, marginal external cost. Again, if you know that they're causing $100 worth of pollution every time they produce a car, then the government is going to say, every time you produce a car, we're going to tax you that $100. So that if we add up the tax along with the marginal private cost, it will exactly equal this purple line here. That purple line will just be the marginal private cost to the company along with the tax. But you see that MPC plus tax is exactly equal to the marginal social cost. Okay. Now, remember the discussion we had about taxes. This again was weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months ago. Okay. With taxes, there's two different prices we need to worry about. So at QS, what does this price represent?
PS.
PC. That's the price that consumers have to pay. But does the company get to keep all of that money? No, of course
No.
not, because there's a tax. How much is the per unit tax?
Wait, why is QS and PC? No, I didn't understand.
Okay.
I understand PC.
You understand
but
that the QS is the socially optimal quantity. That's where we want to be.
okay.
Okay. That's why we taxed this company exactly in this amount of MEC. Okay. So that now the marginal private cost curve shifts up by exactly the amount of this tax. So that this new purple line here is now marginal private cost plus tax. But that's exactly the same as the marginal social cost. What that means is we'll be at this socially optimal quantity, but at that quantity, because this is a tax, there's two prices you have to worry about. One price is this guy. Okay, this is the price that consumers have to pay. But because there's a tax, the company doesn't get to keep all of that price. What they need to do is they need to pay the government. Let's say they need to pay the government this much. By the way, how much is that vertical amount?
A tax.
Yeah, it's exactly this vertical amount. Okay, it's exactly the amount of the per unit tax. Okay, so after taking that tax away, then the company is left with this much, PP. Okay, the price to the producer. Okay, so that's how much the producer gets to keep. Okay, and again, what is PC minus PP? What's the price that the consumers pay minus the price that the producers get to keep?
The surplus.
Yeah. Here is just the amount of the tax.
What the government gains.
Yeah. Okay. So this was the per unit tax. Okay. The tax was something like $100. $100. But it was $100 per quantity. But how much quantity are we producing here?
QS.
QS. So all we have to do is take our tax, our per unit tax, and multiply them by the quantity, in which case we get that nice area there. So before, the area represented total amount of government spending. What does this area represent now?
Government income.
Yeah. Okay, the total amount of government tax income, or with taxes we call it government tax revenue. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, going back to welfare economics, what do we used to call this area here?
Profit.
No,
I know.
Consumer surplus.
consumer surplus. What do we
What?
used to call this area here?
Producer surplus.
Okay, and then this guy is going to be the government surplus. So what did we used to call this little triangle here?
Deadweight
Deadweight.
loss.
We used to call that deadweight loss. Oh man, I can't write today. We used to call that deadweight loss. You know what it is now? Absolutely nothing. That triangle is not deadweight loss now.
What is it?
Remember, think back to what the idea of deadweight loss is. Deadweight loss is how much worse off your society is because you're not at the socially optimal level. But here, what is the socially optimal level? Q star or QS?
US.
QS.
QS.
That by definition is socially optimal. So what that means is when we're at QS, how much deadweight loss should we have?
None.
None. There is no deadweight loss. So this triangle here, even though it's so very tempting, it's not deadweight loss. It's nothing. Okay? It would be deadweight loss if we were producing at Q star. Because at Q star, socially speaking, are we producing too much or too little?
None.
Too much.
At Q star, we're actually producing too much because you see it's above the socially optimal quantity. Okay? So at Q star is where this triangle would be deadweight loss. Weird, huh? Okay, so even though that triangle is there, if we happen to be at QS, that triangle, it represents nothing. It's not deadweight loss. Okay, remember, we're at the socially optimal level QS. There is no deadweight loss there. But if we leave the situation alone and there was no tax or anything like that, and the firm decided to be at Q star, then this triangle here would actually represent deadweight loss. I know this is very, very confusing, okay?
Well,
And we're going to have to work through some practice problems for you guys to get this 100%.
How is it called? The triangle. It doesn't have a name.
At QS, it doesn't have a name. There is nothing there. Okay? At Q star, that triangle would be deadweight loss. Okay? So even though the concepts might be a little bit difficult, always, always, always go back to the fundamental logic behind it. With a positive externality, something you decide to do that has a positive effect on those people around you. If left alone, you're not going to do enough. So the government is going to step in and try to get you to do a little bit more by giving you a subsidy. With a negative externality, if left alone, you're going to be doing too much production. So somehow the government wants you to do a little bit less to benefit society a little bit more. Okay? And the only way to get you to do a little bit less is to tax you. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there's our story with positive externalities, negative externalities. We have one more topic to talk about on Thursday, which is going to be public goods. And then we'll be done with micro. Okay? And for sure, I'll give you a problem set to work on for these externalities and public goods. It's going to be a little bit, it's going to be strange. It seems to make sense now. Okay, but if you start looking at some multiple choice or free response questions about externalities, it gets very, very confusing. Okay, so we'll practice some of those. All right?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, I will see you guys on Thursday. Some of you guys.
Yes. Thank you, James.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.